Today's event is Keep Files Where They Belong in SharePoint, not ServiceNow. I'd like to hand over the microphone to our host, Mr. Brian Vernon, Vice President here at DTech Apps, and his colleague, David Sandberg, our Solutions Consultant. With that, Brian, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, David. Let's get started. I'm looking out at some of the folks here, and I recognize some names. So welcome back if you are returning to get another dose of some of our applications. And for those of you that are here for the first time, welcome. A little bit of information about who DTech Apps is. DTech Apps is the software division of Discover Technologies, and we are most importantly building certified applications on top of the ServiceNow platform. I bring that up, we'll touch on it again a little later, but it's important to know certified applications function just like a native ServiceNow application. You kind of plug them in. Very little else has to be done, and you're off and running. And so certified applications, a little bit above just a typical scoped application. How do we get into this? Some of you may have heard of Tasker. That was our flagship product, is enterprise task management, enterprise work management on the ServiceNow platform. Now, why do we do it? Tasker was really there to fill a gap in the ServiceNow offering. ServiceNow, fantastic workflow engine. If you need workflow, you're going to go to ServiceNow. But there was and still are many people that are using email to try to track their daily work. Maybe email in a combination of a giant spreadsheet. We see this quite often. And what Tasker was designed to do was to be so easy that you could move that off of a unsecure platform like email and move that into the ServiceNow environment and have real-time reporting on what everyone is doing, visibility into activity. For those of you on the call that are from the government, where that might resonate today would be with executive orders and the DOGE orders that are coming out of the White House. So we have customers that use Tasker to be able to have insight into what everyone is doing, the activity, but make it very easy for them to do so and have that real-time reporting. If anyone is interested in Tasker, finding out more about it, feel free to reach out to me afterwards and we will have a separate discussion. What we're really here to talk about today is Doc Integrator. And there's really three components to Doc Integrator. At the core, which is what this is all about today, keeping files in SharePoint. We noticed shortly after we built Tasker that there was a gap between ServiceNow and SharePoint. There was really no easy way to kind of seamlessly connect the two. And that's how Doc Integrator was created, more from the user experience. So we could keep documents inside of SharePoint, never have those documents leave, and not inside of ServiceNow, which is not a content management solution. We then added additional functionality with Doc Generator and Doc Flow. So imagine that not only is everything living inside of SharePoint, but I was able to take any standard PDF form and auto-populate those forms very easily and very quickly with data stored in any ServiceNow table. And then once I've auto-populated that form, for example, I could then route it very easily using DocFlow for the necessary approvals and electronic or digital signatures if needed. And what's interesting, we'll talk a little bit more about, is by using DocFlow, you do not have to use those expensive applications like DocuSign or Adobe Pro. You can actually do that using Adobe Reader, the free version, and we're going to show you that today. I talked a little bit about it, but ServiceNow, the leader by far in workflow, everyone on this call knows that you're going to be building workflows. You're going to do that on the ServiceNow platform. And then you've got Microsoft, which is a leader in enterprise content management, now even becoming much more of a leader in the AI side with their Copilot applications. And certainly we all know Microsoft from all the office productivity applications. But you may think that these two kind of giants would work seamlessly together, but they don't, and hence why we went out and created Doc Integrator. So let's talk a little bit about why you want to keep your files in SharePoint. Well, to me, the obvious is, let's take advantage of all of the great Microsoft collaboration that comes with 365. Do I want to co-author, co-edit documents? Do I not want to have to worry about version control? These are all reasons why documents should stay inside of SharePoint. When we talk about scalability, I mean, SharePoint was built to handle large volumes of content. I know some of the people that are on this call are with some of the largest SharePoint customers in the world. Enterprise grade security, things like compliance and access controls, all built into the SharePoint offering. And, if we're being honest here, there's still pitfalls that prevent ServiceNow from being an enterprise content management solution. Robust search capabilities. Microsoft's always been very good at being able to search content within SharePoint, but now when you add that Microsoft AI component, Copilot, you can not only search all of your SharePoint content, but you can search across all of your Microsoft applications. And then finally, I mean, ServiceNow's document management capabilities just really don't compare to SharePoint's. And we're going to try to show you that today. What are some of the development challenges? Well, if you're going to try to use the SharePoint spoke, as many of you probably have, there's really two different types of problems. One, developers, right? If you're going to have developers do it, it's expensive and it can be time consuming. We hear this over and over again. If you look at the average kind of span for an employee at any particular entity, any organization, it's usually about 18 months. So you've got to worry about the turnover and what they've done. Does that get lost into for the person that takes over that? And then if you're not going to do it in-house and you're going to outsource it, we know that can be very expensive and time consuming as well. And then if you're going to take on that ServiceNow development, the SharePoint spoke, it's a rigid API set. There's really no UI that is designed for business users to go in and make necessary changes. It's really got to be a technical development group. And then the last one, which I think is really important, is the file management and the duplication. If you're attaching documents to a case, let's say, everyone knows that process of downloading a document to the desktop, finding it, downloading it to the desktop. You make changes. You've got to keep multiple versions on your desktop. You have to upload it back into ServiceNow. Now you have multiple copies within ServiceNow. Which is the right version? Do I have to go back and delete stuff? We're going to show you how all of that goes away by using the Doc Integrator application. And lastly, storage costs. If many of you may already be experiencing this, if you are, overloading the amount of documentation in ServiceNow, you can run into those storage costs. So we think SharePoint is certainly the right way to go for that. So why Doc Integrator instead of the SharePoint spoke? User-friendly interface. Instead of like I said, talking about coding and needing developers, this is going to be very user-friendly. And because we're a certified application, a COTS solution, you can integrate our application in, it says days, I would even say probably hours. Once you do one, you can very quickly deploy that across the enterprise. Because it's a COTS solution, we are maintaining it, right? So we're doing the updates, we're doing the enhancements, and based on the way that we license our application, it's user-based, you can deploy Doc Integrator across the entire ServiceNow ecosystem. So You buy it once, but you plug it into ITSM, HRSD. We've listed a few here, SPM, CSM. We want you to leverage this across your ServiceNow ecosystem. And if you are using Spoke, you're always going to require, a developer to maintain and manage your work. Compatibility. Doc Integrator works not only with 365 SharePoint Online, but also with your on-premise SharePoint versions, where the Spoke is only compatible with SharePoint Online. And lastly, and probably just as important, we're more than just that SharePoint integration. That's the core of what we do. That's why we built Doc Integrator. Let's close that gap and make it for the end user, a very seamless user experience when I need to access information in SharePoint, but I need to do so from within ServiceNow. But on top of that, we're going to allow you to automate and auto-populate hundreds, if not thousands, of forms. And once you do that, you can route those forms very easily for approvals, and even will show you digital signatures. And this is not workflow. I want to make sure we are clear on this. We are bringing everything right to the cusp of workflow, but it's designed to be done by your business users. I leave you with this thought. How many of you on this call today, it would be an interesting for the chat box, how many of you have enterprise-wide contracts with Adobe Pro or with DocuSign that are costing millions of dollars, but they're only used by a fraction of the population of the organization? We're going to really show you how you can eliminate or reduce that greatly by using Doc Integrator and even the free Adobe Reader for those digital signatures. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn it over to my partner, David Sandberg, and he's going to show you the solution. David, take it away.
All right, thank you, Brian. In today's demo, we're going to discover how we can collaborate and operate on documents in ServiceNow, but the documents always live in SharePoint. So key theme, right? Keep your documents in SharePoint, the system where they belong. So what we're looking at right now is a typical record. So we're within CSM workspace, but Doc Integrator, that ServiceNow to SharePoint connection, can plug in anywhere and everywhere. So that's any app such as ITSM, CSM, HRSD, even custom applications. And additionally, in terms of the experience, workspace, platform, and portal. So anywhere and everywhere we can plug in. We're looking at all of the core information that a CSM agent would need to proceed with a case. Doc Integrator is just another tab within this process. So it's the same user experience for a ServiceNow user, right? They may not even know where these documents really reside because it is that easy. Before talking about and hopping into Doc Integrator, just to set the stage of what the Spoke does and how we do it differently. So the Spoke is a great tool for workflow and on the admin side. So if you need to, let's say, create a site or a group, that is where you would use the Spoke. What we do is provide the end user with that user interface to actually manage documents that live in SharePoint, but it looks like they live in ServiceNow, and we are not duplicating the files. There is always one that is stored within SharePoint. Before getting into the crux of it, just two pieces to highlight. For individuals that have other documents living in SharePoint and we need to easily find them and bring them into the case, you have that capability. So if we're looking for SharePoint documents, let's say that contain the word policy, we can always bring them into the case. Additionally, we have this idea of federated search because it works with Teams, Outlook, and SharePoint. So based on the logged in user, it looks at your Teams and Outlook and your SharePoint as well. So this is not breaking the inheritance, right? The permissions of all these solutions. Only things that you can see in your email, Teams, and SharePoint is what you will see in this experience, right? It is just based on that logged in user. And additionally, documents, again, they never touch ServiceNow. So even if you take a document from your local desktop and bring it into this case, right, into this record, the document goes directly to SharePoint, bypassing the ServiceNow experience. So the two common use cases, and Brian was speaking about this before, is co-editing those Microsoft documents, so Word docs, Excel, and PowerPoint, and the other one is digital signatures with Adobe. So the first one we're going to look at is co-editing or co-authoring. So you can simply, right, you just give it one click, and this document, as you can see via the URL, fully resides in SharePoint. In terms of co-editing, right, any of our colleagues that are here, we can all make our contributions at the same time. Not much to talk about here, because if you're familiar with SharePoint, it has all the capabilities because this is using that platform. So any type of track changes, right, any type of comments, your edits, that is all stored. To take it one step further, so a lot of our customers are either adopting or thinking about adopting Microsoft Copilot, right, the AI solution. So if you do have that, you can easily leverage it into the case. This really saves time, just makes it easier for the end user, so you can quickly understand, and collaborate or work right with Copilot. Hopping back into our experience right within the record, the other use case is digital signatures. So Brian said this before, we can work with the DocuSigns and Adobe Pros of the world, but for a lot of our customers, this is very powerful because we function with free Adobe Reader, where some customers can eliminate DocuSign, or they can significantly reduce the number of Adobe Pro licenses because they're just using it for digital signatures, right? Not for the other capabilities that Adobe Pro offers. The thing to note is we are bringing this down to our desktop via OneDrive, and that syncs with SharePoint. So this is never being downloaded to your local machine. So there is no download, edit, and upload process. We're reviewing this document, and from our point of view, we can add our signature. For those that are in the government space, which I know some of you on the line are, you can add your digital signature and use your PIV or CAC if you have one, right, for credentialing purposes. And if we just open this document, just like we opened the Word document a few moments ago, you'll see this is the digital signature stamp that was just provided. So why is that important? It's because we are always working on the most up-to-date current version in SharePoint, right? We are not having to work on different versions because we downloaded the file, made our edits, and uploaded it into the system, and other colleagues are working on those files as well. So before transitioning into the platform experience, right, this was within one particular application, CSM and Workspace. Again, right, to reiterate what we were speaking about a few moments ago, we can plug in anywhere and everywhere. So just for those that want to see the platform experience, right, not everyone is operating on the more modern Workspace today. We're going to look at SPM. So that's a project record within the SPM suite. And Doc Integrator, again, just like before, is going to be just another tab within this experience. So what we're looking at is a project, all of the core information, right, who the PM is, the status, and just in that simple UI, now you have the documents, again, that live in SharePoint. So same functionality. And the reason this is important is we license per user, not per app. So we strongly encourage our customers to plug and play in any application. Me as a solution consultant, non-developer, I can embed these in applications in 1 or 2 hours. So this just shows how you'll get, from a customer perspective, time to value, and all different users, right, fulfillers will be able to get this type of experience easily. And this is all without, right, developer support. So to just show it again very quickly in terms of co-editing, right, simply opening that document, making any edits you need, and if you do have, right, Copilot, you can leverage it for, right, summarization or really creating, enhanced text. Hopping back over to this experience, the other one is that digital signature capability, and we will talk about this a little more in the next section as well. So in free Adobe Reader, we pulled this document down via OneDrive, again, never touching our local machine, adding our digital signature for those in the Fed space. Use your PIV-CAC if you have one for credentialing. And just like that, we're on our way, and we can now proceed with, right, managing the rest of our project. So this is just 2 perspectives about how you can collaborate and operate on documents, whether it's PDFs or Word, PowerPoint, Excel, but all in the familiar ServiceNow experience, never happening to swivel chair. Take a brief pause. Anything before we hop into the next piece, which also involves forms automation?
I will say, David, one question was, how is this different from, you see this got away from me, how is that different from ServiceNow's SharePoint online search connector? So at some point, you may want to call that out during the presentation.
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about this now, and I'm assuming that the Workflow Data Fabric (ECC) external content connector for SharePoint Online. So there's a few differences. The first one is with ServiceNow, it's transaction based. So let's say you have 100,000 files in SharePoint and you crawl them. That's 100,000 transactions against your kind of allotment, where for us, you can query and pull back as many as you'd like. There's a few other areas, one of which is that crawl. So I think it's a little bit uncertain within ServiceNow, but it seems like when you do that crawl into SharePoint, it brings that data into ServiceNow. So you are also managing it in 2 different systems, where the whole point of Doc Integrator is to connect to SharePoint, but everything resides in SharePoint, inheriting that security, and you don't have to manage those documents or content within the ServiceNow experience. And the other one, which is probably most important to most users, is it crawls based on a schedule. So let's say, give an example, at 10 a.m., you're collaborating with a colleague. That file is now in SharePoint, but the crawl is every day at 9 a.m. So that means for 23 hours, that file will not be visible within the ServiceNow UI, where hours, right when the file is in SharePoint, you can see it from the ServiceNow experience. So happy to have further conversations on that. Those are just a few of the differences of how we really approach this challenge. So now we're going to transition into the last piece, and it takes Doc Integrator just a step further. So Doc Integrator is the overall platform. It also ships with something called Doc Flow, which we'll just call it Doc Integrator Enhanced for the time being. So it leverages the core capabilities of Doc Integrator, such as keeping files in SharePoint. It's all about rapid forms automation. So as opposed to creating a custom app per form, we can automate 10, 100, 1,000 forms through our framework. And this could all be done via low code or, in my case, with no code. So it's combining SharePoint, ServiceNow, and rapid forms automation. This can be triggered anywhere and everywhere. So right now we're within an HR record, right? HR case. We can trigger it via, a state change. This could be done via a business rule. It could be done from a portal perspective, a catalog item. Someone makes a ticket, someone makes a request. But for us, what we're going to talk about today is a UI action or a button. So this can come in terms of cases many different ways. If someone, does that self-service process, you probably won't even need the HR agent. If it comes via, phone call or email, maybe even through the VA, right, through the virtual agent, this will create a case for an HR agent within the system. And in this case, this employee, David, wants to work from home, wants to file for a telework application, and it's as simple as selecting this one button, so making it very easy for this ServiceNow user to do their job. What we're going to see is the experience from David actually reviewing all the information for the form and signing it, and then later we're going to see how this affects the case that we're looking at. So let's fire this off. And hop into what we call the single pane of glass for Doc Flow. So this again is Doc Integrator Enhanced. For those that have not seen this yet, if you are a ServiceNow user, right, you're a fulfiller, you can access this just like any other module or application. For those that are not heavy ServiceNow users, you'll most likely be caring about your day, receive an email, click on that link, and be prompted into the system that we are looking at. The very important piece to call out is you are not hopping back between email and this experience, because once you're here, all of the tasks, all of the signatures for the documents you have to do, it is all in your to-do list. In terms of the chain of command, we can see, right, who is this assigned to, whether it's an individual or a group, and the due date, which is not always clear in email. Additionally, I'm sure by this point you've seen we're heavily embedded within the ServiceNow ecosystem and the Microsoft suite, so you can even collaborate via Teams when it comes to DocFlow. And we've all been in the situation where there's, let's say, a 3-page form with 5 pages of instructions. You can tailor the instructions per person, per group, right, per route, to make it as easy as possible when they only need to do one thing, right, verify and sign. We do call this DocFlow or Doc Integrator Enhanced because this document, even though it looks like it lives in ServiceNow, it fully resides in SharePoint. So just like before, we bring this down via OneDrive, right, to Adobe. So this document never touches your local machine. And the two pieces to mention are there's a component that can auto-populate data into forms. So that's part of this whole suite as well. And this is really valuable when David doesn't have to, right, spend time adding all the information or keying in, let's say, the wrong phone number, and this happens to have to go back to him, right, within that process. So it just makes it very easy where it takes data in any ServiceNow table. So as long as the data exists, it can take it, put it directly into the form, add any other information that you need, and from the employee standpoint, provide your digital signature. Again, for those in the government space, you may need your PIV or CAC. And from this, now we are done with this specific approval. So we mark this complete. It will proceed to the next either individual or group in the chain, and we can go about our day hitting all of the other components. This, just to recap, is the experience for any approver. So if you're an employee, a manager, or especially an executive, you have this single pane of glass to do anything that you need when it comes to approvals and signatures. Now, let's come full circle. Looks like it closed out that case we were just on. So let's come full circle and look at that HR case that the HR agent fired off that telework application. So again, Doc Integrator plugs and plays in any application such as HR. So now you can see this document, right? This is the telework for the user that requested it for David. You can see even the route status. So it is completed. It is in the the next group's hand. So someone will pick it up and work on it. And why is this important? Because everyone's on the same page, right? All of this is centralized within the ServiceNow experience. And the last piece to call out, the last piece to show, if we open up this document, you'll see that digital signature that was just applied. So this just shows how we are always working on the most up-to-date version. So before we transition into Q&A, right, just to provide this quick recap, we experienced the seamless UI for any ServiceNow user. You're going about your day, let's say as a CSM agent, HR agent, and without swivel chairing, interacting with documents that live in SharePoint. So these can be Word, PowerPoint, Excel, or PDF as well with digital signatures. And lastly, we took this a step further and saw how rapid forms automation can make anyone's lives easier within your organization. And at the same time, this provides visibility, as you can see, to those who need it.
David, I just wanted to ask you to point out, I mean, this is not workflow, everything that you just showed.
That is correct. None of it is workflow.
Right. So it's really designed for the business user to be able to set up those routes that David showed you. So not to involve IT or have to have a developer come in and help with that.
All right, DC, any questions in the chat? Anything we want to highlight?
From Leo, it says, how are the documents organized in SharePoint? Are we browsing our existing SharePoint folder structure when linking documents to ServiceNow? He says, maybe I missed it, but are we able to create new documents from ServiceNow or just link existing documents?
You can create new documents on your desktop and upload them. So it goes directly to the SharePoint configuration that's set up, whether it's a certain library site folder. So you upload that document, it goes directly to that where that is configured. In terms of the folder structure, there's a lot to unpack of you can definitely use your existing structure, but we might be able to help in that respect as well. So happy to have another conversation, but yes, you can create documents, and that is bypassed through ServiceNow to SharePoint.
There's a question, David, in the chat. It says, what is the minimum Adobe subscription needed for any user working with documents with ServiceNow and your application? Well, I think the answer is there. If you're using the free Adobe Reader version, there is no minimum requirement. Would you have anything to add to that, David?
That is correct. Yes, there is no minimum requirement. Free Adobe Reader suffices for signatures. If your organization does have a lot of Adobe Pro, one thing that we've seen is downsizing that footprint. So let's say you have 100 users using Adobe Pro and only 5 of them actually use that functionality, like creating fields. All those 95 individuals can use free Adobe Reader, and it functions perfectly within the platform.
David, one thing I would add is we have customers that were spending millions of dollars on Adobe or DocuSign, and only a small fraction of their employee base was using it or needed it. So this is a great way to cut some costs and maybe repurpose that toward other applications like this that can do the job at a fraction of the cost.
All right. Anything else in the Q&A or the chat pane?
I think David is asking, is PDF form preparation for field mapping done in Adobe, or do you have a PDF editor?
We have a wizard, and this is part of the Doc Integrator suite. It's called Doc Generator. But Doc Generator, Doc Flow, and Doc Integrator, you can think of them as one and the same, has that wizard capability where you take a field in ServiceNow, you take a field in the PDF, and you map them. So essentially auto-populating with data. That is a wizard that we have.
And David, I think we have found in working with some of the entities in the state of California that, if that PDF can be populated, if the fields are set up to accept, to be able, to effectively ingest data, that we can take that in a matter of minutes and show how that works.
And for me, I can't see who asked that question, but if there is a specific form that you're looking to automate, we're happy to automate it in our system. We can do that rather fast and demo it back. So feel free to reach out to us, and if there's a specific form that you want to see demoed.
Last question. Does our application work with the existing ServiceNow document management application?
Yes. So document management, right, is a place to store documents. So the question I would have is, do you want I guess the two questions are, do you want to store them there, or do you want to store them in SharePoint? So that's the first question. And the second piece is we also can move files between ServiceNow and SharePoint. So we've had a use case where all files live in SharePoint. Once they are marked complete, they are then attached and moved to the ServiceNow record that's associated. So as opposed to, we saw it in the Doc Integrator widget in that area, that document is taken from SharePoint and put into the ServiceNow record. So we can absolutely move files back and forth. But I think the key question to ask is, do you want them to stay fully in ServiceNow, or do you want it to sometimes or all the time reside in SharePoint? Oh, and I guess while that's being answered, if the idea is to move documents from ServiceNow to SharePoint, we also do have a services offering called Doc Migrator. I know a lot of Doc this, Doc that, that takes the files in ServiceNow and moves them to SharePoint. So that is also an option if you do so choose.
Yeah, David commented their goal is SharePoint, to have documents in SharePoint.
Of course. So yeah, we can definitely have a further discussion on that front. Again, that's that Doc Migrator tool that migrates. Yep.
There's a question, is there a certain version of ServiceNow that is required for this capability?
There is not a certain version. I've used it all the way back to Vancouver. I don't know if anyone else on the line has seen an issue. But we are a certified application. I've used it all the way to Xanadu. So I've not had an issue with that. Anyone on the DTech side have anything to add?
I mean, theoretically, the ServiceNow requirement is N-1, right? So one version behind if you're going to maintain support. So sometimes federal can be N-2, but we are just like ServiceNow N-1, N+1, and we're actually testing in Yokohama right now. So we're pretty far ahead as well.
And that's one of the advantages to using a COTS solution, right? That is certified on ServiceNow, is we are always up to speed with whatever ServiceNow is about to release.
Correct.
For the individual, I'm sorry, David, that asked earlier about pricing, please reach out to me and let me know. I'm happy to review pricing, on the application.
And just to provide an overview, this was heavily geared towards documents living in SharePoint and having them accessible via ServiceNow. We also do a few other things, as Brian talked about in the beginning, enterprise work or task management, which Doc Integrator can also plug into, and a forms automation tool, so taking standard forms and rapidly automating those processes. So happy to have follow-up demos and conversations on those if that fits.
Hey guys, this is Rob Joy. There was a question asked about the difference between what we do with search and what ServiceNow does with search. So I'll just answer that briefly. The way that ServiceNow handles search, they had two different components. One was the SharePoint search connector. That capability is discontinued, so they are going to slowly turn off support for that. I'm guessing they didn't have a lot of people on it if they discontinued it. What they're pushing and promoting now is called Workflow Data Fabric, and that's what they're going to be using to promote search. The difference between what they're doing is and what we're doing is our search is going to go against SharePoint. So we're going to continue to work to make our search better, and working with Microsoft and Copilot. We'll be able to prompt into Copilot and do all the things that Microsoft does with documents inside of our capability. ServiceNow is focused on how do you make workflow decisions, and how do you bring information to users through their AI. So they're actually going to crawl, and if you look at the workflow data connector, it crawls SharePoint. So you're going to end up with your crawled and indexed data in ServiceNow somewhere. So you're going to be doing a periodic crawl over into ServiceNow, and then you're going to apply ServiceNow's AI against the data that was crawled. So very different approaches, and you guys can think about, what's going to work best for you based on your different scenarios that you've got to design. But that's kind of the difference in our two approaches.
Oh, and Rob, I'm happy you brought that up. The one piece that I did leave out is the ServiceNow method, right, is for SharePoint Online. We also search across Teams and Outlook. So it's a true federated search where you're at an organization for a few years. Documents can live anywhere and everywhere. We can search all of those in one search.
Thanks everyone for joining, and I hope you saw something that was pretty cool and attractive today.
That concludes today's presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to email our team directly. You can reach out to Brian or David, our presenters, with the contact information you see on the screen.